2025 has been a wild season thus far, producing some iconic moments such as Todd Kidd's back-to-back Ajax 200 wins, Diego Orkedi becoming the active Ajax Cup Series all-time wins leader in West Virginia, Shane Park scoring his first oval win in nearly 2,000 days at the Stoneyard, and Braden Bennett scoring his first Cup Series victory at Disney in just his 22nd start to snap Toyota's drought. If you want to cop any of those replica diecasts, head on over to Circle B Diecast /Plan B Sales and use coupon code ASCA to get free shipping on any orders $20 or more at checkout. Hello and welcome back to another edition of the ASCA Weekly Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Fallon, back in here with another episode, and boy, what a dazzling, spectacular Windows 300 we just saw Sunday night. The 15th annual edition certainly did not disappoint. We've got a ton of stuff to talk about from the most prestigious weekend in the ASCA. The first half of 2025 is now wrapped up. We look forward to the second half of the season in both the Craftsman and the Cup Series. We had a huge silly season announcement in the next era, the new generation for Orkedi Bros Racing, the sport's most successful dynasty in the modern era. And then we're going to be previewing the inaugural race at Utah Motorsports Park, the NDRL sanctioned track that the ASCA has never raced at before. So it's going to be super interesting to see what goes on there. These drivers, these teams, they have no idea what to expect. So really cannot wait to see this Saturday's inaugural Workfront 200. But first, before we get into it, we got to shout out the sports premier partners, Rowdy Energy. You already know, click that link in bio. Go cop yourself a Rowdy Energy to help keep you awake throughout the duration of this podcast. And then Circle B Diecast /Plan B Sales. Hey, if you want a replica diecast of the one that Todd Kidd just used to win the Ajax 200 and Windows 300 in back-to-back years, go ahead on over to Circle B Diecast /Plan B Sales and use coupon code ASCA for free shipping on any orders $20 or more. So once again, shout out Rowdy Energy, shout out Circle B Diecast /Plan B Sales, and yeah, let's get into it. So Todd Kidd, he is the man of the hour, and let's just take a step back to kind of appreciate what he's done over the past 2 years, really, because I think this is important. So this is a guy that had been much maligned for the first 8 years of his career, no championships, no crown jewel victories. And you see guys, other young drivers who have come up and blossomed into superstars like Greg Healy and Cameron Atwood, both winning the Windows 300 and winning championships. So you look at that and you look at Kidd, and he was supposed to be the darling, the best of those guys, the next big thing for the ASCA. And you're like, okay, where is this going? Like, he was coming off a runner-up points finish in 2023, only one victory. You had to wonder, he was age 27 at the time, you had to wonder, where was this going? Was he ever going to take that next step? Was he ever going to win a title? And while he obviously didn't win one last year, things just kind of fell apart for him towards the end of the season. Like, he started out the season so red hot with 3 wins in the first 8 races, which was a career high for him. The most he had ever had in a campaign before 2024 was 2. And he had 3 in the first 8 races. So red hot start for the 9 team, dominant performance in the Ajax 200, came back, won the Windows 300. Car got hot late. They hit on the setup, and then he was able to fend off his teammate Shane Park for victory in both of those events, actually. So you look at that and you're like, man, he won 3 races. He still can't win the title. What is it going to take, for 2025, with all the talk we've had even this season about Cameron Atwood and Greg Healy's championship windows closing? We've seen in the past with guys like Nick Orkedi and his championship window, how it really kind of slammed shut after 2020. He really took a step back, and that was just, I believe it was 31 for the 2021 season. He he never was the same driver he was previously, towards the latter half of the 2010s. So that could happen to Kidd at any moment. And, you know, even this season, he wins the Ajax 200, kind of gets quote unquote lucky, if you want to call it that, just a beneficiary of Ross Jackson and Jared Ayers getting together on the last lap, right place, right time, steals that race, goes back to back there, only leading the final lap. But then, he'd kind of, I wouldn't say it struggled, but he hadn't been showing the elite levels of speed that Diego Orkedi did, responding with back-to-back victories, even beating Kidd at the streets Computerville, or Shane Park, who heading into Sunday night had won 3 out of the last 5 races. So you're looking for Kidd to kind of establish himself. Like if you want to win a championship in this business, you either have to be ridiculously consistent, and I'm talking like Randall Wood's 2021 levels of consistent, and that's if you don't have the elite speed like a Cameron Atwood did in 2023 when he just goes out and wins by an era record 5 races. Like, that's the elite speed I'm talking about. And I think to beat Diego Orkedi this year, it's proven you're going to need elite speed, because the 22 team is throwing everything in the kitchen sink they have at trying to get the drive for 5 completed in 2025. And Kidd showed that. He showed that on Sunday night. We have been waiting to see it for him for a while. I can't even recall, we had a top 5 at Michigan, but he was nowhere close to Shane Park. It looked like Park was the one that had found the elite speed. He had found something, but no, Kidd responded in the Windows 300. And I get it. Diego really controlled the race, and Orkedi Bros Racing really controlled the race with Diego and Carson Schmidt. Kidd only really led the final, I believe, 23, 22 laps, something like that. But you could tell there was a point in the race where I believe right before the first caution came out, lap 122, you kind of had Diego and Kidd. They were within about 2-3 seconds of each other. And then they looked to the Bush area view cam, and Braden Bennett is just now entering turn 3 with Diego at the line and Kidd exiting turn 4. Like, you could tell the 22 and the 9 were in a league of their own. You could kind of predict that from the way practice went. And they were 1-2 in happy hour. They clearly had their cars dialed in. Kidd did not qualify the best, but he's never been a great qualifier, never outstanding. Neither has Orkedi. But for both drivers, you could tell they were the class of the field. It was going to be between them. So, and you look at what happened, obviously, in the Ajax All-Star race between these two drivers. For Kidd to score this victory, back-to-back 300, something that only Diego and Caleb Henderson Jr. had ever done before him, this is massive. And obviously, it's the biggest race of the campaign. Like, this is huge, not just in terms of the points for Kidd to put him level with Orkedi 8 races in the season, which we'll get into that. That's absolutely just fantastic. Like, this championship battle is shaping up to be one of the best of all time. But it's just a massive confidence booster for this 9 team that, hey, we can do this. We can go toe-to-toe with the 4-time champion, a 27-time Cup Series winner, and we can beat him. They nearly got that after the All-Star race, but y'all know what happened there. This is kind of that stamp of approval, that championship statement that we always talk about. Todd Kidd made one on Sunday night. And in terms of what this means for his ASCA legacy, this is, I think we're talking Hall of Fame territory right here. I get it. It sounds blasphemous to talk Hall of Fame for a driver that's still competing in present day, especially for a driver who has never won a championship. But Todd Kidd is 1 win behind Dan Rogers for the most of any drivers who have not won a championship. I find it hard to believe he won't end up tying Rogers at some point this season with how the 9 team just ran on Sunday night, going toe-to-toe and beating Orkedi. Like, it's like he and Orkedi really have equal cars at the moment, and it's really just going to be up to the drivers to kind of settle it on the track. So like they are class of the field right now, right back to where they were, especially at these high speed aero tracks. Which it's kind of looking like that's what Utah's going to shape up to be, another one of those high speed aero tracks, really the fifth one on the schedule. Much different from Colgate, where it's all driver. Utah looks like it's going to be a high speed aero track. And again, we'll get into that later on in the discussion, but that favors Orkedi and Kidd. So, just looking at that, it's huge. It's a big victory for Kidd. And in terms of his ASA legacy, I think it's safe to call him a Hall of Famer. And remember, Rogers had 14 career wins at age 38, where he was he quote unquote retired. Obviously, kind of got booted out. He's still racing today, to this day, in the ADRS. But Kidd is only 29, and he's at 13 career wins. He now has multiple Windows 300, something only 3 drivers have ever done before him. Winning the biggest race in the sport multiple times is not something, obviously, that many can say. Randall Woods has never won this race, 2-time champion. Nick Orkedi only won it once. Rogers himself, he only won it once. Jimmy Hood only won this race once. So multiple times, that's nothing to scoff at, nothing to sneeze at. I think he is proving to be the best of his generation. We know that obviously Healy and Atwood have the championships, but it seems like they kind of struck a lightning in the bottle for 1 to 2 years, and they've kind of fallen back down to earth. Like they haven't really competed for a title since winning their championship. Meanwhile, Kidd has been up there every single year since the start of the decade. Like his consistency is unmatched, and he's going to win a title eventually. I think, you can't finish top 3 in points for 5 straight years and not win a championship. Looking like it's going to be 6 if the 9 team can heat this up. So Kidd, I think, cemented his place whenever he decides to hang it up, even if he decided to hang it up tomorrow for some reason, I think he'd be a Hall of Famer. First ballot. No doubt in my mind, honestly. But as we move on to the championship, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier, Diego Orkedi and Todd Kidd are tied in the point standings right now. They are tied, literally tied. And this is something that we've never seen before at the halfway mark of a season, especially since it was moved to 16 races at the start of the decade. We've seen, 1 point be the margin. 2022 comes to mind, where it was really tight between Lester, Healy, and Todd Kidd. And obviously Diego Orkedi had really gotten that role in the second half of the year and made things interesting. But these two, Kidd and Orkedi, level on the point standings. And I think they kind of separated themselves from Shane Park in this race. And don't get me wrong, Park obviously wasn't bad. He brought him a top 5 finish, and arguably, I think you could say he was the reason that Todd Kidd won this race. If he doesn't push Todd Kidd on that restart there with, I believe it was just under 40 to go, something like that. If he doesn't push, basically the final restart, what I'm trying to say, if he doesn't push Todd Kidd on that final restart, Diego, I think, prevails. He sends it into turn 3. He keeps the possession over Kidd, and he wins the race. So don't get me wrong. Shane Park, obviously having a breakout season, career year. What he's done is fantastic, but I don't see the consistency on the 24 team that I see with the 9 and the 22. And especially now that we have no more road course races the rest of the season, obviously that's Park's bread and butter right there. We know on the road courses he's unstoppable, but anywhere else he has never been, I would say, dominant. And obviously that could change, but as it stands right now, I just don't really foresee Park being like I wouldn't say he's a pretender because if Todd and Diego, they continue to collide and get together, he can capitalize, he can pounce like we saw in the All-Star race. But I think it's really between the 9 and the 22 at this point. And level on points at the first half of 25. After the first half of 2025, I cannot talk right now. This is insane. It's just insane. And then we head to such an unknown like Utah. Like anything could happen this week, beginning this West Coast swing. And so let's just kind of transition to previewing the second half of 2025. And like I mentioned, the West Coast swing, I think these next 3 weeks are going to really decide how this championship is going to go. So we head to Utah, obviously, this week. And Utah, again, unknown. We don't know. Then we head to San Diego. That's Todd Kidd's home track. He won here in 2022, but Diego Orkedi also won here in 2019. Graham Daugherty was a late race bump and run, but he's been dominant here before. I believe the year before, 2018, comes to mind, where he dominated that race, led like 177 laps, but he had that rivalry with Michael White at the time, and White ended up intentionally wrecking Orkedi. He lost the lead to Jimmy Horn in the final restart, and the rest ended up being history. So, Orkedi hasn't been, I would say, dominant per se at San Diego, but he's also no pushover there, obviously. But neither is Kidd. So I could very easily see both of them kind of running up towards the front, although Atwood and Healy should be the ones to beat on a short track. Then we head to Denver. And that's kind of another unknown because neither Orkedi or Kidd have won there. I believe outside of Utah, that's the only track remaining on the calendar that neither of them have won at. So that one I think is going to be very interesting to play out. Diego has been extremely hit or miss there in the past, but so has Todd Kidd. So that could be another really swing race for either of them. You just really don't know how that one's going to pan out. Then we head to Ajax Super Speedway. It's a plate race. That's just a complete toss-up. You just never know. Obviously, both Kidd and Orkedi have won there multiple times, but again, it's a plate race. You just don't know. Then we head to the Stone Yard. 2022, another 200. Does that ring a bell? We could see Act 2 of that coming up in 2025 because we know that Orkedi and Kidd, they both won there. Orkedi's won there 6 times, Kidd once in 2020, but you could argue he could have won the 2022 race as well, had that little slide job by Diego not going horrifically wrong. So that's another one where it's a toss-up. You're starting to sense a theme here. Like, all of these races are toss-ups, man. There's no clear-cut favorite, I think, for any of them. And then you head to Computer Motor Speedway again. That was another race we just saw Sunday night. That was a toss-up between Orkedi and Kidd. It came down to the final restart. And I guess the point that I'm getting at here is that this championship is going to come down to 2 things. Who makes the least mistakes and who focuses the most on developing their car with the current regs versus turning their attention to the future with the turbo hybrid engines for 2026. Now, obviously, Orkedi Bros Racing and Ronnie Wiz Motorsports are powerhouses. If there's anyone that has the funds to focus on doing both, developing their cars for this championship versus developing for next season, it's both of those teams. Like, we're already kind of seeing teams like smaller teams that struggle, like Revolution Racing, Tiga Bond Motorsports. I believe Dexter Andrews Motorsports just confirmed that they're not really developing the rest of the season. It's a loss year for them. I think we'll see other teams, like kind of B-level teams, like Snoots Enterprises, like TJ Barrymore Racing, really kind of slow down development, the rest of the season. As the season wears on, so they can focus on the turbo hybrid engines and the V6 regulations. Barani Woods Motorsports and Orkedi Bros Racing have said from day one, we are going all in for this season. We're going all in for this championship. And obviously, they've been keeping up with each other on development throughout the first half of the season. And I expect that trend to continue throughout the second half of the season to provide these two elite level drivers the proper machinery to go out and, go put on a show and battle and compete for a championship. I think that's exactly what we're going to see. Now, the other part, the drivers can't really control the off track development in the garage, the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. But what the drivers can control is the on track mistakes and these little moments, these pressure situations that you look back on and say, that's what won X, Y, or Z the championship. And I think that if Todd Kidd wins the championship, we're going to look back on that restart in the Windows 300 where Shane Park pushed him and say, that's what won him the championship. And I think there's going to be a few more of those down the stretch. So we're going to say, Diego Orkedi, they made a mistake here. The other driver capitalized. That's what won them the championship. Or vice versa. The pit crews, pit road. That's also going to be crucial. These pit crews. It's not just these two drivers. It's the teams, the pit crews, the crew chief, the setup, the strategy. There's so many things that go into this, and they all have to be perfect in a title fight that is the closest in ASCA history. These teams, they have to back up their elite level drivers, and everyone has to be picture perfect on the top of their game throughout the rest of the season until December 18th at Belltown. So I can't wait. I think it's going to be a fantastic showdown between these two, a heavyweight duel that I know that the fans are kind of sick of seeing the championship locked up early, like we've seen the past couple seasons. I think similarly to 2022, this one's going to go right down in the wire. So fortunately, though, if you like to see other drivers besides Diego, Kidd, and Park win, I don't think that's going to happen very much throughout the second half of the season. Because like I mentioned, a lot of these other teams are focused to the future. They're focused on the turbo hybrid regulations. So keep an eye on that heading into 2026. Let's talk a little Craftsman for a minute, though. The 12th annual TreatMyPC.com 150 took place on Saturday afternoon. And obviously a lot of the focus was on the incident between Gunnar Thorson and Graham Daugherty on that earlier restart. Tony Delval, can we talk about this 18-year-old rookie for a second? So Ford Development Program was dominant on Saturday. They placed all of their cars within the top 10 in qualifying, including 17-year-old Caden Dunham in his ASCA debut, qualifying outside front row. That's insane for a 17-year-old, but we're starting to see it like routinely. We saw it with Daugherty. We saw it with Delval last year. He won pole. And now we're seeing it with Dunham here, which just proves that the youth movement in the sport is just fantastic right now. And these guys are going to be racing consistently on Saturdays in the near future as they continue to grow and develop in the Craftsman series. But Delval spoiled that party on Friday afternoon for the Blue Ovals. He won pole, his second straight at Computer Mode Speedway, third of his career. Then in the race, Ford's running 2, 3, 4, 5. Guess who ends up winning the race, though? Tony Delval. And I will say it wasn't just Delval that won the race. It was his crew chief, Adam Steinbach. He's the real one that made the difference here. He won this race. I wouldn't say single-handedly because obviously Delval did a fantastic job behind the wheel. No doubt about it. And holding off a veteran like Sean Wooden is far from easy. He coped with the pressure brilliantly. No doubt about it. But if Steinbach chooses to box the same lap as a Donde or a lap later than a Donde, the 20 team does not win this race. A Donde wins this race. That call to go for the undercut, go for the fresh tires, knowing how valuable they are on such a one-track surface like Computer Mode Speedway, that's what won Del Val this race. So brilliant call there to go for the undercut. And that's another one of those little moments that we'll look back on at the end of the season and say, hey, that's what won the 20 team this championship potentially. But I think we're kind of, it was really a toss up. I think for most of the first half of the season, like, okay, who's the championship contenders? Who are the pretenders? But I think two names have kind of emerged and are kind of starting to pull away from the field. And that's Del Val, obviously the points leader, and then Sean Wooden, who's really come to life these past few weeks. He had that awful race in West Virginia, but he had a top 5 at Disney. I believe he had a top 5 at Belltown, had another top 5 or something close to that at Michigan, and then it brings home. Actually, I don't think he brought home a top 5 at Michigan, but it was a pretty solid result, something inside the top 10. And then obviously the third place finish in the TreatMyPC.com 150. But those top two are just separated by 7 points right now. And then third place defending champ Graham Daugherty is back there in 18 back, tied with his teammate Ian Adonde. But, not to take anything away from Daugherty and Adonde, I think both of those guys are cup talents. Obviously, we know what Daugherty can do, and we're going to talk about him in just a second. But I think that they're just not on the level of the 20 and the 12 right now. And we know Sean Wood, an odd number seasons, that's where he really seems to light it up and really get things rolling for that 12 team. 2021, with that fantastic fight he gave to Laquan Scranton, obviously coming up just short. And the same situation in 2023, the incredible comeback. He reached 26 points down the stretch on Colin Ward, but just ended up falling 4 short of the rookie. That, again, just proving how incredible of a talent Colin Ward is, So, yeah, I think that Wooden is going to push Del Val to his limits, and we'll have to see if Del Val is as special of a talent as Laquan and Colin Ward have proven to be. I think personally he is. He is the first Toyota driver to ever win the TreatMyPC.com 150, which when I first saw that blew my mind. I'm like, Toyota's been in this series since, the inception of the race in 2014, but they've never won it before. Even when they had cup drivers in the field like Jared Ayers and I don't think I believe it was Dan Rogers who used to run this race from them back in the day, but I can't officially recall. They had guys like Winter Surrender winner Boris Sables behind the wheel. Basically, the point I'm saying is they had big names competing for them that just never were able to close a deal in this race. I remember they had Michael White himself running this race back in 2019, I believe, coming out of retirement for that one. So, just really incredible scenes for Tony Del Val, huge for him. And we'll see if he's able to hold off Sean Wooden. 7 down, 7 to go in the second half of the 2025 Craftsman Series season. All right, so let's talk about the new driver of the number 2 for the 2026 Ajax Cup campaign. And I think that this is something that a lot of people saw coming from day one, obviously after being an 18-year-old rookie and doing what he did, holding off, staving off the pressure from Colin Ward, the defending champion at the time, and Marcus Edwards, a 3-year experienced veteran to win the championship. That's not something that any rookie can do, let alone an 18-year-old rookie can do. And I get that Graham Daugherty hasn't had the best of seasons, although he's put up very similar statistics. In fact, the same stats, same amount of top 5, same amount of top 10s that he had at this time last year, just without the TreatMyPC.com 150 win and without the TreatMyPC.com 150 win and I lost my train of thought right there, but you get the point. Daugherty has not been disappointing this season, just not as flashy as he was a year ago. So him to the 2 car still makes a lot of sense. The replacement to Nick Orkedi and that iconic ride, and Nick ended up handpicking Daugherty as his successor. Can't fault him in the slightest. I don't really know who else they could have gone with that would have been a better option than Daugherty. Honestly, you can't sit here and tell me with a straight face like Ian Adonde is a more promising young talent than Graham Daugherty. I mean, like, come on now. You can't tell me that. So, and then, Chris Barrymore, that we're hearing the sweepstakes for him has gotten to like 14, $15 million. Do you really want to pay that for a guy who's going to be 28 next year with only 5 cup wins? I don't think so. Maybe Barrymore can unlock his true potential in Orkedi Bros Racing equipment, and he is obviously a much more known quantity than Daugherty. But I'd rather take my chances on this 20-year-old kid and hope that you just found the next Todd Kidd, because after all, Todd Kidd started out as a 20-year-old rookie with all this potential. Um, Defending Craftsman Series champion, came in the Cup Series at 20. The rest is history. So I think they made the right decision to go with Graham Daugherty, and it's really the kicking off of a changing of the guard atop the sport. I think, especially for Orkedi Bros Racing, they're gonna have 23-year-old Carson Smith in the 12, 20-year-old Graham Daugherty in the 2. Obviously, Diego is still kicking at age 35. I don't think he's going to slow down anytime soon. We're expecting him to kind of slow down at 33, 34, but he's won his 4th championship last season, looking like he could very well win his 5th this year. So, Orkedi Bros Racing, though, they're preparing for the future. They're preparing now. Obviously, they have to prepare for life after Nick as he embarks on his next journey, and wish Nick the best in his retirement. But soon they know that by the end of the decade, they might have to prepare for life after Diego too. So, to go out and put Daugherty in this team and get him that experience so that when Diego does ever decide to hang it up, he'll have plenty of seat time. He'll develop into, hopefully, you hope, the next superstar, the next Diego Orkedi. We'll see. We'll see. And obviously, they still have Carson Smith there as well. They just inked him to a 2-year extension through the 2027 season. Daugherty just signed a 3-year deal through 2028. So they've got their young talents locked up, and they have Diego kind of there. Probably now that he's more calm, cool, and collected, he's the best mentor that you can think of. A 27-time Cup winner, 4-time Cup champion. I mean, who else would you want to be mentored by, honestly? So great move for Orkedi Bros Racing. Really like it. And they're preparing for the future, life after Diego. And no-brainer selection on their part, even after it's a little controversial incident with Gunnar Thorson in the shootmypc.com 150. But again, I think that was more of an accident than anything, just a tough racing deal. So now we move on to the final topic, previewing this upcoming weekend of racing. And we talked about Utah a bit. It's shaping up to be, based on what the teams are seeing from the data coming back from the simulators and the test sessions there, Utah is shaping up to be a hybrid between kind of a road course and a high-speed aero track. It's 2 miles in lane. Turns 1 and 2 are kind of like a rectangle, like Ajax Super Speedway, that type of rectangle. So turns 1 and 2 are just completely different from 3 and 4, which is much more rounded, like West Virginia Computer Motor Speedway style track. So it's really tough to navigate. And I think that just the dichotomy of the corners here is going to throw these teams for a loop trying to find the right setup. But in terms of who to watch, obviously it's going to be the 9, the 22, and the 24. They've been the ones to watch all season. They've won 6 of the 8 races in 2025. I don't see why that wouldn't continue. In terms of who can maybe challenge these guys, I think Braden Bennett has just had a fantastic season. He's got a shot. I think Randall Woods, he's another guy with his new crew chief, David Jaquez. He doesn't get enough credit, I think, for the job that he's done turning that 18-team season around. Literally single-handedly carrying them from 21st to now the top 5 in the standings. Like, that's absurd what the turnaround in just a quick amount of time that team has had. So they definitely made the right decision to make the tough call to part ways with championship winning crew chief Steve Wallace. I think that, yeah, he's going to be a threat. I think Greg Healy, he was pretty good in the Windows 300. Had a poor qualifying effort, but I think they were just fully focused on the race, and it paid off because he was one of the fastest cars on that final run. Ended up bringing home a 6th place finish, but was tracking Shane Park down towards the end. He finished second at West Virginia. I think he's going to be a threat. So I do think that if there's anyone that can bring a challenge to Orkedi Bros Racing, it will be Michael White Racing, specifically the 11, the 18, and the 19, because Jared Ayers has. Do we even want to talk about his season? It's just been an abject disaster. But then for the Craftsman Series, it's another standalone event. They're at West Virginia. Free Tender Plus on the line in the Tender 125. Who's going to be the ones to beat in that race? Tough situation, tough deal. Obviously, Graham Daugherty absolutely slapped the field, murked the field, whatever you want to say. Just dominated. I think he led from green to checkers last year, from pole position to victory lane at his home track. He's obviously going to be one to watch, but so is Tony Del Valle, because the 20 team has proven on high-speed aero tracks that they are the ones to beat this season. They just dominated at Computer Motor Speedway. Del Valle did win pole he won pole at Computer and at West Virginia earlier this season. The 22, Cody Turner is going to be in it this week. That could be a car to watch. Obviously, with the way that Doug Ballin dominated West Virginia earlier this season, we'll see if Turner can repeat that feat and maybe score himself a Craftsman Series full-time ride next season. But I think overall, I think Gunnar Thorson's another guy. He was really doing some stuff, ripping the fence earlier in the season at West Virginia. You know, we'll see if he can kind of translate that, because he is really fast in the TreeMyPC.com 150 as well. It's just kind of a shame what happened between him and Daugherty that we didn't really get to see that battle between the two 18-year-old rookies out front. But overall, I think my picks for the Tender 125, screw it, we're going with Tony Del Valle the second. He's been ridiculous this season. 5 top 3 finishes in the 5 races that he's finished this season. I don't see why that wouldn't continue heading back to a track for the second time. So give me Del Valle to win the free Tender Plus and Tender 125. And then for the Cup weekend, Diego Orkedi needs to respond. He did have the dominant car at Utah. It just kind of came down to things not going his way on the final restart. I don't see why he wouldn't be able to bounce back this weekend and win the inaugural race at Utah. I think he's going to be able to outduel Kidd in Park and bring home the checkered flag for his 3rd victory of the season. So, yeah, Del Valle, Orkedi, those are my picks. Yeah, so that's it for this edition of the ASCA Weekly Podcast. Shout out to everyone for tuning in. Be sure to do the usual. I don't even know what to say at this point, but we'll see after another spectacular weekend of racing at Utah Motorsports Park in West Virginia.